The enormous alien ship appeared out of nowhere at the edge of our solar system like a deadly crystal floating in space. Its surface sparkled with strange lights that hurt to look at directly. Inside the ship, Commander Kickstar stared at his screens with all four of his alien eyes, studying the radio signals coming from the small blue planet ahead. "Look at this garbage," he said to his crew, pointing at the human transmissions with one of his long fingers. "These creatures are still burning fuel to fly around in space. They fight with metal bullets and simple explosives. How did they even make it off their dirt ball of a planet?" His officers laughed at the idea. The Velthari had conquered 47 different worlds, and every species had surrendered quickly once they saw the superior alien technology. This would be easy. Meanwhile, on Luna Station orbiting Earth's moon, Admiral Minho Kim was having the worst day of his military career. The 60-year-old commander had fought in 3 different wars, but nothing had prepared him for this. A blue hologram of the alien commander appeared in his office, speaking in a voice that sounded like a broken computer. "Attention, primitive humans," the alien said, not even bothering to sound polite. "Your species has been chosen to join the Velthari Empire. We'll surrender all your weapons and submit to our rule. I have exactly 72 hours to decide. If you refuse, we will destroy every human settlement in this system." Minho felt his blood pressure rising. After 40 years of military service, he had learned to stay calm under pressure. But this alien's arrogance was testing his limits. He pressed the emergency button on his desk. "Captain Hannah Lee, get in here now," he called out. Within seconds, his most trusted officer rushed into the room. She was young but tough, the kind of person who could handle any crisis. "Sir, I monitored that transmission," she said, her face pale. "Every military base in the system received the same message. The politicians are already calling emergency meetings." Minho stood up and walked to the window overlooking Earth. The planet looked so peaceful from here, with its blue oceans and white clouds. Millions of families were down there, living their normal lives, completely unaware that aliens were planning to destroy them. "How many ships do we have ready for combat?" he asked. "About 300 across all the fleets, sir," Hannah replied. "But according to our scans, that single alien ship has more firepower than our entire navy combined." Minho smiled grimly. Throughout history, humans had always been the underdogs. They had survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and countless other disasters. Each time, everyone thought humanity was finished. Each time, they were wrong. The alien commander was making a huge mistake. He was judging humans by their technology, not their character. He saw primitive weapons and assumed primitive people. But humans had something the aliens didn't understand yet. They never gave up, especially when someone threatened their families. "Send messages to all fleet commanders," Minho ordered. "Tell them to prepare for battle. These aliens think we're easy targets because we don't have fancy ships. They're about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one who has nothing left to lose." As the countdown timer started ticking, neither side fully understood what they were getting into. The aliens expected a quick surrender. The humans were preparing for the fight of their lives. The war was about to begin. The alien fleet moved through space, like a pack of wolves approaching what they thought was a helpless sheep. Commander Kickstar sat in his command chair, watching the Jupiter mining stations grow larger on his main screen. These human outposts looked like floating scrap metal compared to his sleek warships. "This will be over in minutes," he told his crew confidently. "Once we destroy a few mining platforms, the rest will surrender immediately." But as they got closer, something strange started happening. The human radio channels were filled with an odd sound that the alien translators couldn't quite figure out. "Sir," his tactical officer said, looking confused at his instruments. "The humans appear to be ... singing." From the main mining station, Captain June Park's voice came through loud and clear. He was a tough man who had spent 20 years mining asteroids in the most dangerous parts of space. Fear wasn't in his vocabulary. "Oh well. June's voice crackled over the radio with amusement. "Look what the cosmic cat dragged in. Hey there, ugly faces. Those are some pretty ships you've got. Would be a real shame if something bad happened to them." The aliens expected panic. They expected surrender. What they got instead was laughter and insults from humans who seemed genuinely excited about the upcoming fight. "Sir, they're not evacuating," reported another officer. "They're actually moving closer to our position." Kickster couldn't believe what he was seeing. The mining station was launching something at his fleet, but these weren't military weapons. The humans had taken their industrial mining charges, explosives, meant for breaking apart asteroids, and somehow turned them into makeshift missiles. "They're attacking us with mining equipment?" Kickstar said in disbelief. "These primitives think they can fight our advanced shields with rock-breaking tools." The mining charges exploded harmlessly against the alien shields, but that wasn't the point. The humans weren't trying to win, they were trying to send a message. That message was simple. "We don't care how tough you think you are, we're going to fight anyway." Things got even weirder when the human ships started flying directly at the alien vessels. These weren't planned military maneuvers, they were desperate ramming attacks that should have been suicide missions. But somehow, the humans were pulling them off. Lieutenant Su Jin piloted her small fighter through the chaos, dodging alien energy beams while coordinating with the miners. She had been a military pilot for only 3 years, but she understood something important about human nature. "Command, these aliens might have better technology," she radioed back to base. "But they clearly don't know how to handle crazy people." The miners were using everything they could find as weapons. Cargo containers became missiles. Construction equipment turned into battering rams. Even the coffee makers were being weaponized somehow. One particularly brave mining crew managed to ram their cargo hauler into an alien scout ship, causing actual damage to the enemy vessel. The aliens had never seen anything like it. "Sir," the tactical officer reported nervously, "we're actually taking damage from these primitive attacks." "How is that possible?" Kickstar stared at the battle display in shock. His advanced fleet was being hurt by humans using mining tools and sheer determination. This wasn't supposed to happen. In every previous conquest, the enemy had either surrendered immediately or been destroyed quickly. For the first time in Velthari military history, a conquest fleet was forced to retreat from a battle. As they pulled back to regroup, Kickstar realized he had made a terrible mistake. These humans weren't just primitive, they were completely unpredictable. The first lesson had been taught. But it wasn't the one the aliens expected to learn. The news hit Earth like a lightning bolt. Within an hour of the Jupiter mining station attack, every television, radio, and internet connection was buzzing with the same terrifying message: aliens were real. And they wanted humanity to surrender or die. In a small factory in Solbomi, Chang was working her usual night shift when the emergency broadcast interrupted everything. She was a tough woman who had spent 15 years building ship parts for cargo vessels. Her hands were permanently stained with engine grease, and she took pride in her work. "They think we're primitive?" she said to her co-workers, her voice rising with anger. "These alien bullies have no idea what they just started. Let's show them what primitive humans can really do." All around the world, the same reaction was happening. People weren't panicking or hiding in bunkers. They were getting angry. Really? Angry. The kind of anger that makes humans do impossible things. Within 6 hours, something incredible started happening. Every major shipyard on Earth and in the orbital stations began changing their production lines. The huge factories that normally built peaceful cargo ships were now retooling to build warships. It was like watching a sleeping giant wake up and flex its muscles. Bomi found herself promoted to shift supervisor overnight. "We need to build faster," she told her team. "These aliens gave us 72 hours to surrender. Let's give them 72 hours they'll never forget." The shipyards worked around the clock. Civilian engineers who had never designed military equipment were suddenly working side by side with defense contractors. Nobody went home. Nobody complained about overtime. Coffee became the most important resource on the planet. Up in his command, Ship Commander Kickstar watched the human response with growing concern. His sensors were picking up activity levels that didn't make sense. "Lieutenant, run those industrial output numbers again," he ordered. "The readings must be wrong." "Sir, I've checked 3 times. Human industrial production has increased by 400% in the last 12 hours. Wow, they're building ships faster than we thought possible. Star's 4 eyes widened. That's impossible. No species can mobilize that quickly. Meanwhile, Admiral Min-ho Kim stood in the emergency session of the Earth Defense Council. Representatives from every nation were present, and for the first time in decades, nobody was arguing about politics or territory. "Ladies and gentlemen," Min-ho said, his voice calm despite the chaos around them. "We've been underestimated before. During World War II, people thought we couldn't build enough ships to matter. They were wrong. During the Cold War, they thought we couldn't reach the moon. They were wrong. These aliens think we're too primitive to fight back. They're about to learn they picked the wrong species to threaten." The response was unanimous. Every nation pledged their full industrial capacity to the war effort. Factories that made cars started making missile components. Shipyards that built pleasure boats began constructing patrol vessels. Even the space tourism companies offered their rockets for military use. Captain Annalie found herself in charge of the largest shipbuilding project in human history. Standing on the observation deck of the orbital shipyard, she watched hundreds of civilian vessels being converted into makeshift warships. "I don't care if it's not pretty," she told her engineering teams. "Turn everything into a weapon if you have to."
That mining laser can cut through asteroid rock.
"Mount it on a ship and see if it can cut through alien hull." "That construction beam can move building materials. Let's see if it can move alien ships into each other." The transformation was incredible to watch. Cargo haulers became missile platforms. Mining ships became assault vessels. Even the luxury cruise ships were being fitted with weapons and armor. What the Velthari had done was wake up something they didn't understand about human nature. When threatened with extinction, humans don't just fight back, they become completely obsessed with survival. Every factory, every worker, every engineer became part of a massive war machine that was growing stronger by the hour. The aliens had expected fear and surrender. Instead, they got the full fury of human determination. When the aliens came back for their second attack, expected to find the same confused and helpless humans they had encountered before. Instead, they flew straight into a trap that had been carefully prepared just for them. Dr. Hayan-Wu hadn't slept in 3 days. The brilliant engineer had been working non-stop in his laboratory, surrounded by pieces of alien technology that had been recovered from the first battle. His team had managed to salvage parts from the damaged alien scout ship, and what they discovered changed everything. "Admiral Kim, you need to see this," he said excitedly over the video call. His hair was messy and his lab coat was covered in grease stains, but his eyes were bright with discovery. "I've figured out how their shields work. They use a rotating frequency pattern that changes every few seconds. It's like a lock that keeps changing its combination." Admiral Min-ho Kim leaned forward in his chair. "Can we break through it? Even better?" Hayan-Wu smiled. "We can predict it. Their pattern follows a mathematical sequence. Once we know the sequence, we can time our attacks to hit them when their shields are weakest." This was exactly the kind of breakthrough humanity needed. While the aliens had superior technology, humans had something else: the ability to learn and adapt faster than any species in the galaxy. Lieutenant Commander Su Jin was already putting this new knowledge to work. In the pilot training simulators, she and her squadron were practicing attack patterns based on the alien shield frequencies. Her pilots were young and eager, the kind of people who played video games for fun and treated dangerous missions like exciting challenges. "Listen up, pilots," she announced to her squadron. "These aliens think they're so smart with their fancy shields, but we've cracked their code. When I give the signal, you have exactly 2 seconds to fire before their shields reset. Miss that window, and you'll be shooting at nothing." The real test came when the alien fleet arrived at Mars orbit. Commander Kickstar was confident this time. He had brought twice as many ships and planned to overwhelm the humans with superior firepower. "Begin the attack," he ordered. Showed these primitives what real military power looks like. But something was wrong from the very beginning: the human. Ships weren't running away or fighting desperately like before. They were moving with purpose, like they knew exactly what they were doing. Captain June Park had been promoted to fleet commander after his brave stand at the Jupiter mining station. His makeshift fleet looked like a collection of spare parts held together with determination. But every ship had been carefully modified based on the new alien technology knowledge. All ships remember the timing, he radioed to his fleet. Their shields rotate to frequency 7. That's our window. Make every shot count. The battle was unlike anything the aliens had ever experienced. Instead of random, desperate attacks, the humans were coordinating their strikes with surgical precision. They were hitting the alien ships at exactly the right moment, when their shields were weakest. "Sir," reported a panicked Velthari tactical officer, "they're targeting our shield rotation cycles. How do they know our defensive patterns?" Kickstar watched in horror as human ships that should have been destroyed were dancing around his fleet, striking with perfect timing. The humans were using captured alien energy weapons, but they had modified them to be more effective than the originals. "They're using our own energy signatures against us," another officer reported. "Somehow they've learned to copy our weapon frequencies and improve them." The tide of battle was turning. What started as a sure victory for the aliens became a strategic disaster. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were learning and adapting in real time, becoming more dangerous with every passing minute. "Sir, we're losing ships," the tactical officer said quietly. "These humans are not the same species we fought before." Star realized with growing dread that he had made a fatal error. These weren't primitive creatures, they were the most adaptable and dangerous enemy the Velthari Empire had ever encountered. The hunters were becoming the hunted. The war had been going on for 3 months, and everything had changed. Captain Bomi Chang stood on the bridge of her ship, looking out at the strangest fleet in human history. What had once been a peaceful cargo hauler was now a floating fortress covered in weapons that shouldn't exist. Her ship, the Seoul Express, was a perfect example of human creativity under pressure. The cargo bays had been converted into missile launchers. The loading cranes now fired harpoons that could pierce alien hulls. Even the coffee machine had been modified to power a small laser cannon. "All ships, this is Captain Chang," she announced over the radio to her fleet. "I know most of you were hauling space garbage or mining rock 6 months ago. I know you never signed up to fight aliens. But remember this, we're not professional soldiers, but we're human, and that's more than enough."
Ow.
The response from her fleet was immediate and loud. These weren't military officers speaking in formal codes. These were truck drivers, miners, construction workers, and shop owners who had volunteered to fight for their families. "You got it, Captain," shouted the pilot of a converted mining vessel. "Let's show these aliens what working people can do." The Velthari fleet approaching them had no idea what they were about to face. Commander Kickstar had studied human military tactics from their history books, but nobody had prepared him for this kind of warfare. "Sir, they're launching cargo containers at us," reported his tactical officer with confusion. "But the containers are... exploding?" The humans had turned everything into weapons. Those cargo containers were packed with explosives and launched like giant missiles. Mining ships that normally dug through asteroids were now ramming alien vessels and drilling through their hulls. Even the luxury cruise ships had been converted into floating weapons platforms. "They're not following any military doctrine I've ever seen," Kickstar said, watching the chaotic battle unfold. "How do we fight an enemy that has no rules?" Meanwhile, Dr. Hyun Woo was having the best day of his scientific career. His team had not only figured out how alien technology worked, they had made it better. The hybrid human-alien ships were faster, stronger, and more efficient than anything either species had built separately. "Admiral Kim, you need to see this," he said excitedly over the communication link. "We've completely cracked their power systems. When we combine their technology with our mechanical engineering, we get ships that are actually superior to theirs." The proof was flying all around them. Human ships that had been built in a few weeks were outperforming alien vessels that had taken years to construct. The secret was simple. Humans didn't just copy the alien technology, they improved it. Lieutenant Commander Sujin was leading a squadron of these hybrid fighters in a battle that was changing everything. Her pilots were flying ships that combined the best of both worlds, alien energy weapons powered by human determination. Phoenix Squadron, Follow my lead, she radioed to her pilots. These new ships are incredible. You can outrun them, outgun them, and outfight them. Lieutenant Commander Sujin had become a legend among both human and alien forces. Her fighter squadrons were known throughout the galaxy as the Ghost Pilots because they appeared without warning, struck with devastating precision, and vanished. Before the enemy could respond, "Phoenix Squadron, we have multiple targets in the next system," she radioed to her pilots. "Remember, we're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for every species that's been bullied by these aliens." Pilots flew ships that were engineering marvels. They combined human creativity with alien technology, creating fighters that were faster, more maneuverable, and more deadly than anything the Velthari had ever seen. The aliens' own weapons had been turned against them and improved. The reports. Reaching Commander Kickstar were getting more desperate every day. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported quietly, 17 more systems are requesting emergency protection from human raids. Our own conquered worlds are starting to rebel. They think the humans are coming to liberate them." This was the Velthari's worst nightmare. Their empire had been built on fear and intimidation. When subject species saw their conquerors being defeated by humans, they began to hope for freedom. Rebellions were breaking out across the galaxy. Some of the conquered worlds are actually trying to contact the humans, the officer continued. "They're offering to help fight against us." Admiral Minho Kem stood in the command center of the human fleet, watching the tactical displays with satisfaction. In less than a year, humanity had gone from being threatened with extinction to becoming the most feared military force in the galaxy. "Look at that," he said to his staff, pointing at the star map. 6 months ago, we were the prey. The apex predators in the entire galaxy knows it. The transformation was complete. The species that had once threatened to destroy humanity was now running scared from human fleets. The galaxy was watching, and everyone understood that a new power had emerged, one that protected the weak and punished the bullies. The hunter had become the hunted. The end of the Velthari Empire didn't come with massive explosions or dramatic final battles. Instead, it came with a quiet conversation in a small meeting room aboard Neutral Station Omega, where the most powerful alien commander in the galaxy sat across from a human admiral and admitted defeat. Commander Kickstar looked nothing like the confident warrior who had first threatened Earth. His uniform was wrinkled. His 4 eyes were tired, and his voice shook as he spoke. "Admiral Kimai, I must formally surrender what remains of our fleet." Admiral Minho Kim sat quietly, studying the alien commander who had once seemed so terrifying. Now Kickstar just looked like a broken old soldier who had finally met an enemy. He couldn't understand or defeat. "We did not understand your species," Kickstar continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "In all our conquests, we have never encountered anything like humans. Your species fights like no other we have ever seen." Minho's response was calm but carried the weight of humanity's hard-won victory. "You made one critical mistake, Commander. You assumed that primitive technology meant we were weak. In our case, it just meant we were still learning how to fight, and humans are very good at learning." The formal surrender was broadcast across the galaxy, and within hours, everything changed. The Velthari Empire, which had controlled dozens of star systems for over 2 centuries, simply ceased to exist. Their remaining fleets scattered, their conquered worlds declared independence, and their former territories became free. Captain Bomi Chang found herself in an unexpected position. The former factory worker from Seoul was now commanding a fleet of liberated worlds, each one grateful for human intervention. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking out at ships from a dozen different species, flying in formation together. "Captain," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving messages from 47 different worlds. They're all asking for human protection." Bomi smiled at the irony. 6 months ago, we were the ones asking for protection. Now we're the ones offering it. The transformation was remarkable. Dr. Hain Wu's hybrid technologies had become the foundation. For a new era of galactic cooperation, human engineering combined with alien technologies from various species created innovations that benefited everyone. Ships became faster, communication systems became more efficient, and medical technology advanced by decades. The beautiful thing, Heian-Wu explained to a gathering of alien scientists, is that when we combine different approaches to the same problem, we get solutions that are better than any of us could achieve alone. Captain Hannah Lee found herself addressing the first Galactic Council meeting in over 200 years. Representatives from dozens of species had gathered to discuss the new political reality. Some were former Valthari slaves, others were neutral worlds, and a few were even former allies of the defeated empire. Let me be clear about something, she told the assembled aliens. We humans are not conquerors. We don't want to rule over other species or force anyone to follow our ways. We're protectors. We fight bullies, defend the weak, and help those who ask for help. She paused, looking around the room at faces that represented hundreds of different worlds. But make no mistake, if you threaten innocent people, if you try to build another empire based on fear and oppression, you'll learn exactly why the Valthari are no longer a threat to anyone. The message was clear and understood by everyone present. Humanity offered something the galaxy had never seen before: protection without domination, partnership without conquest, and strength without cruelty. The other species began to understand that humans were unique in the galaxy. They didn't want to rule others. They wanted to work with others. They didn't seek to conquer. They sought to defend. They had turned from victims to protectors in less than a year, as the meeting concluded, and representatives returned to their home worlds. One thing was certain: the galaxy had entered a new age. An age where bullies would think twice before picking on smaller species, where cooperation was valued over conquest, and where humanity stood ready to defend anyone who needed protection. The new galactic order had begun. 5 years had passed since the Valthari Empire fell, and the galaxy had become a very different place. Trade routes that had been controlled by fear were now open to everyone. Species that had been enslaved for centuries were building their own governments. And at the center of it all, humanity had become the galaxy's unofficial peacekeepers. Admiral Minho Kim stood in his new office aboard the Galactic Defense Force headquarters, looking out at the most diverse fleet in history. Ships from dozens of different species worked together, their crews learning from each other and sharing technologies that made everyone stronger. It's amazing what happens when people aren't afraid of being conquered, he said to his aide, watching a group of former Valthari slaves teaching human engineers about their energy systems. The peaceful morning was interrupted by an urgent alarm. Captain June Park rushed into the office, his face grim with familiar concern. "Sir, we've got a problem. Long-range sensors have detected a massive fleet approaching from the outer rim." Minho felt a familiar tightness in his chest.
Right.
"Empire, looking for conquest." "Yes, sir. They call themselves the Drakethal Empire. Intelligence suggests they've been studying old Valthari records about Earth. They seem to think we're still the same primitive species that was nearly conquered 5 years ago." The news spread quickly through the Galactic Defense Force. Within hours, Admiral Sujin was reviewing tactical data about the new threat. She had been promoted from lieutenant commander to full admiral, and her experience fighting the Valthari had made her one of the most respected military minds in the galaxy. "They're making exactly the same mistake," she said, with a grim smile. "Studying the enemy fleet composition. They see our old technology levels in the Valthari records and think we're easy targets. Should we teach them the same lesson we taught the last empire?" The human response was swift and decisive. The Galactic Defense Force began mobilizing, but this time it wasn't just human ships preparing for battle. Dozens of allied species volunteered to help defend the peace they had all worked so hard to build. Captain Bomi Chang found herself commanding the most diverse task force in galactic history. Her flagship was a testament to 5 years of cooperation, a vessel that combined human engineering with technologies from 17 different species. Her crew included former Valthari slaves, liberated mining colonies, and even a few reformed pirates who had decided they preferred protecting trade routes to raiding them. "Captain," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving volunteer requests from 43 different worlds. Everyone wants to help stop these new invaders." Bomi smiled as she looked at the tactical display. 5 years ago, we were fighting alone. Now we've got the entire galaxy watching our backs. The Drakethal Empire had no idea what they were about to face. They had studied old intelligence reports that showed humans using primitive weapons and desperate tactics, expected to find the same frightened species that had barely survived the Velthari invasion. Instead, they were about to encounter a unified galactic defense force led by the most adaptable and determined species in known space. The humans had spent 5 years learning from every species they had liberated, creating hybrid technologies that were beyond anything the Drakethal had ever imagined. Admiral Minho Kim stood in the command center, watching the Allied fleet prepare. "For battle! Deploy the Welcome Committee," he ordered with quiet confidence. "It seems some species need to learn that there's a reason why the galaxy has been at peace for 5 years. As the human-led fleet moved to intercept the new threat, a message was broadcast across all frequencies in the galaxy. The words were simple but carried the weight of hard-won experience. "Congratulations, you just declared war on the wrong species." Again, the galaxy watched and waited, knowing that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their ships or their weapons.
Ow.
It was their absolute refusal to let anyone threaten the peace they had fought so hard to create. Some lessons, it seemed, needed to be taught more than once. The new war was about to begin, but this time humanity wasn't fighting alone.